The first guest of the evening is truly a poet. He's an artist. He is a friend and an inspiration to anyone who has ever played the guitar or tried to write poetry. Would you please welcome Gordon Lightfoot?
Does your mother know you have to go someday? Does your mother know that you would grow so fast? Anyway, that's all you think about. This is Carefree Highway Revisited, the show that celebrates the work of Gordon Lightfoot song by song. I'm your host, Mike Messner, and with me today is a fellow Lightfoot fan from Montreal, Quebec, making his second appearance on the show, Gerry Kandestin. Gerry, welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Now, the last time we had you on the show was actually before Gord passed away. You were with us in January of 2023. Are there any big headlines in your life apart from the loss of our musical North Star?
Well, let's go back to the death of Gordon. I was out at a dinner with clients and got into my car and looked at my phone, and I had texts from 3 of my friends wishing me condolences on the passing of Gordon. I put on the radio and they were playing all his songs, and I drove home for about 20 minutes with tears coming down my eyes.
Sure.
I do a charitable event once a year with band members who I've played with for years, but they're professionals. They're not like me. They carry me through it. He died in May. In December, we did a Gordon Lightfoot tribute show where we did some of his songs, which was very somber. For me, it was hard to not tear up and stop playing, but I managed my way through it.
That had to be one of the more difficult gigs you ever had to play. I think it says a lot about the meaningfulness of his music, and that is the entire reason why we do this show, is to talk about his music, and because the music is going to go on, because it always has. You wanted to talk about Does Your Mother Know? And I want to hear what the meaningfulness of that song is for you. I mean, for me, I love it because it's a song of him being very empathetic and expressing concern for another person. And it's also got one of the best turns of phrase that I've ever heard Lightfoot do, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we get there. But what draws you to the song? Why did you want to talk about it today?
Well, this was a deep album cut. I don't think Gordon ever played it live anywhere. It was on, to me, one of his greatest albums, Did She Mention My Name, which was out in early 1968. It is a song that is, like so many of his best songs, a beautiful portrait that this songsmith just paints for you as you listen to it. This is a portrait of a young girl who probably left home against her parents' best wishes, moved from the east to the west, in what country? Probably Canada, and was having her troubles. And you develop such empathy for this poor little girl. She has a love affair and breaks up, but was in fact very deeply in love with the man she was with. She talks about getting straight one day, which leads us to believe that maybe she was doing some type of recreational or other drugs. It's a very sad but realistic tale about what happened. And it was very typical in that era. He captures it so beautifully, just like he always does. When he nails it, and he nails it on this song, you can just see the portrait. You can picture this girl when he says, "Does your mother know you walked all day in the rain?" You can picture her depressingly walking in the rain. Just a great song.
Do you have any personal stories about the song, or maybe an event where it really hit home for you? Something like that?
Yes. In 1968, I was an aspiring high school student, and we had one year a very progressive English teacher. She was from London, England. We thought she was old. She was probably 23 years old. But to someone who's 16, that's old.
Yeah.
And instead of making us recite and learn poetry from the standard school board books, she allowed us to bring in songs, and she printed out the words, and we talked about the songs. So once a week, a student would bring in a song, and one of my friends brought in this song called Does Your Mother Know? And I listened to it and was taken back. It was on the album, which this student brought in with her. It was on the Did You Mention My Name album. And there was a big sticker on the album that said, includes Black Day in July, which was the hit that Gordon thought he would have, but for political reasons never had from that album. But that was the song that they were playing on Montreal radio stations during that time. So I listened to it, and then walking downtown to my favorite record store, there was Did She Mention My Name? And I took $3 out of my pocket, which I'd saved up, and bought it. And I fell in love with that whole album, including Did She Mention My Name? It was very well done. To my knowledge then and now, it was the first folk album to ever have strings added to it. John Simon was an aspiring avant-garde producer, and he added strings to that, which Gordon didn't use for a long time after that. Later in 1968, I was working for the high school newspaper, and my friend who was the editor and I, who was the assistant editor, found out that Gordon was playing for one of the universities at some auditorium, and we decided we would go down with a reel-to-reel portable tape recorder that my friend had, and we would interview him. So we're sitting outside, and out comes Gordon and John Stockfish and Red Shea, and they are loading the speaker columns into the Volkswagen bus. And we're talking to him as he does it, and my friend says to him, most people aspire to having a hit song. You've had one banned, being Black Day in July, which was not banned. It was just shunned upon by many radio stations.
Yeah, in this side of the border especially.
Well, the U.S. side, and probably in the Canadian border towns too. They stopped playing it. It obviously was a great song, but it just hit too low. And we started talking, and he said it wasn't banned. It was just not played that often. So I chimed in and I said, I really loved that album, Gordon, especially John Simon's strings. He said, well, you know what? That was an era. That was his word. That was an era. Our next album will be out in a few weeks. It's just me, Red, and Stockfish. And we said, okay. And I remember then going to the record stores a month later, and there was Back Here on Earth, which is still my favorite all-time album. But Did You Mention My Name is a close second. This song was just a phenomenal song. Again, there were so many deep album cuts on that song that were phenomenal. But this one, it strikes home because it paints that somber, kind of sad portrait of a girl who's mixed up, left home, doesn't know what to do, afraid to go home, ashamed to go home, all those things.
I'll make a quick side trip here. You talked at some length about Black Day in July, and I've done that on my show. The thing about it is that it's turned out to be such a perfect encapsulation of the Detroit race riots that I use it in my ethnic studies classes even today,
Really?
as background music for the pictures that came out of those riots. And I don't know that there's a better depiction of a specific 20th century event in the States as that one. And ironically, it was written by a Canadian. And we won't go into the entire backstory of what Lightfoot's thoughts were or his reluctance to be involved politically. But I wanted to make sure that I got that little intersection in there because you did talk about Black Day in July a lot.
Well, when it talks about the sons of the fathers who were carried to this land.
Yes.
I mean, just a great song.
Is there a setting for you to listen to this song that would be just absolutely perfect? Or could you truly listen to the song at any time, doing anything at any place?
I always tell friends, and they get bored with me telling stories about Gordon Lightfoot because They want to say, okay, Gerry, we've heard that before, but I keep saying my favorite Lightfoot song is the one I'm listening to right now.
Okay.
And I can listen to any song anytime in any place. I'm very ambidextrous in listening.
I like that way. Ambidextrous in listening. I'm going to have to keep a hold of that. For Does Your Mother Know? I scoured the internet, and the Nicholas Jennings book was of no help whatsoever. It didn't even show up in the index.
Yeah.
So I have no angle at all on how the song got written. One thing that I did find interesting was that there is no personal pronoun in this song. So we don't know if Gordon was projecting narration or was truly being a first person. The person that he's talking about is not even given gender, although we can safely conclude that it's a young woman, but he doesn't give any attributes. Anyway, do you have an angle about how the song got written, where it was written, what the circumstances were?
Well, I think, as he would explain in any interview, all of his songs were written very tensely. Gordon would sit down, closet himself, isolate himself with a guitar and a scratch pad, and he would just write. He was very, very disciplined. It wasn't like Dylan, where he woke up one morning and there he is writing a song, and then he goes out for coffee and he comes back and writes another one. Gordon was very disciplined. He needed silence. He needed his own table to do his writing on. It probably cost him his first marriage. When he lived in Rosedale, there was a house for sale that was vacant, and Gordon made an arrangement with the owner to go in there with his table and his guitar and just sit in this empty house and write songs. And when he was under pressure, because there was a United Artist or Reprise album due, that's what he did. And he just let loose and would come out with 15 or 20 songs and pick a dozen, and that would be the album.
It's just amazing that any songwriter as prolific as he was can do what they do in such a short amount of time. But I like the distinction where Dylan would write things. You see this in old movies. You're writing something on your cuff or a napkin, or something like that. But Gordon was much more disciplined. There's no other way to say this.
Yep.
I think of Bill Gates. Twice a year, he'd take everything he wanted to read and would go away by himself for 2 weeks and just read in this giant condo that he had someplace in Eastern Washington, I guess, or maybe even across the border in British Columbia. You don't necessarily think of musicians being disciplined. There's a stereotype about all sort of artists waiting for the muse to strike, but Gordon was much more deliberate about that.
This album, like most of his albums, as he's described, was probably written over a 2-week period, where just night and day, there he was, erasing words, replacing them, not liking the chords, so he plays a different riff and likes that better. And when you think about it, just look at this album. He's got everything from The Mountains and Marianne to Does Your Mother Know to Pussy Willows, Cattails to Boss Man. I mean, look at the variety. It's not like, well, every song sounds the same. His songs don't sound the same. There's such clear differences. So he's a true genius. When you meet him, which I've had the absolute pleasure to do on so many occasions, he's a very, very, very simple guy. There's no complexity about him. He's just a Northern Ontario guy who had a talent. You talk to him, and after you walk away from talking to him, you say to yourself, how did this guy write those songs? It's almost incredible. There's this inner Gordon Lightfoot that doesn't project to the public, but it's hidden within him, and he can coax it out at the right time. He's immensely talented.
God rest his soul. And I've heard a lot of people have the same kind of reaction. They walk away from saying, this could be my next door neighbor. This could be a guy I meet at church. This could be the guy who delivers my milk in the morning. You're listening to Carefree Highway Revisited. We'll be right back after a word from a podcast partner or two.
250 and Counting is the podcast that walks you through American history one day at a time.
I'm Mike Messner.
I'm Claude Call.
Join us as we spend just a couple of minutes with you
Each day,
telling you about the events that took place exactly 250 years ago on that date.
you'll learn more about the big events
And the small events.
that led to American independence.
Look for 250 and Counting in your favorite podcast software.
That's 250 and Counting from Acroasis Media.
Radio is so much different than it was in the 80s. We had it all. The music, the movies, the DJs, and morning shows. Back to the 80s Radio is a show from the 80s in podcast form. We bring the memories from that awesome decade back. Join Toscano and Chang every Friday as they take you on a ride back in time, sharing their experiences and laughs. Stop on by and discover some of the wacky things this crazy duo comes up with. They talk about it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the greatest decade. Don't miss the greatest 80s podcast in the world. Back to the 80s Radio.
Well, let's start looking into the lyrics here, Gerry. Does your mother know you had to go someday? And that felt odd for me because isn't every child supposed to grow up and leave the nest? So it's almost a rhetorical question.
Well, yeah, I mean, your mother knew that you had to go someday, but it was premature because the next line is, does your mother know that you would grow so fast? So it's almost as if, yes, every parent knows that at a certain point, their son or daughter is going to leave home and make a life for themselves. But this happened too soon. And the mother knew she'd go eventually, but she grew up too fast and perhaps grew up prematurely and wasn't ready to leave the family home, but nevertheless did.
I know that my wife and I are preparing for that kind of experience, although we would like to think that our son hasn't grown up too fast. But a year from now, he will be in college, most likely in Washington State. So we're kind of girding ourselves to be empty nesters in that regard. In that second line, he says, anyway, that's all you think about. And that's kind of an admission that Gordon knows this person and that she has been confiding in him about her feelings. Now, we don't know what the context is, but how else would he know what she was thinking?
Yes, and it's almost like she's got some guilt that she abandoned her mother and her father and left the family nest too early. That's right. When he says, anyway, that's all you think about. And then he says, you'd call her if you could. Why can't you? Well, she can't because she's got other problems that you get to later in the song. It really builds up to the portrait of this poor little girl who left home and is probably ashamed to go back home and is out west, had a lover who she threw out of her house, perhaps had a drug problem, is living hand to mouth, and is probably not that happy, but you'd call her if you could. She can't call because maybe there's a little bit of pride involved. Doesn't want to admit that she's got these problems.
Oh, I think that's certainly part of it. I think the other part of it, maybe she doesn't have a phone because if she's living hand to mouth, maybe she can't afford a phone. The kids that I'm around literally can't imagine a time when they didn't have a phone in their pockets. Or if she does have a phone, she can't afford the long distance call because it's implied that she, the subject of the song, is out west and not knowing a great deal about Canadian geography. I'm just going to spitball it and say that it's in Calgary maybe or Edmonton or Vancouver.
It sounds like either probably around Calgary or as far west as British Columbia. I can state categorically that there were no cell phones in 1968.
Well, if there were, this woman certainly didn't have any access to them. I can tell you that. No. But then the back east would be, again, spitballing. It might be Toronto. It might be Ottawa. It might be Montreal, York. We really don't know. But it is someplace that's more on the eastern seaboard. Yeah. But the letters that you write in the faded winter light. So this is being written during the winter.
That's quintessential Canadiana. Remember, you're outside of San Francisco. It actually gets cold up here.
Yes, and it's not a cold that I can imagine. But I guess what I mean by that, Gerry, is that the letters that you write in the faded winter light. So this is taking place during the winter. And very likely it's in a northern city in Canada. And the reason I say northern city is that in Alaska, where I have been, it is very, very dark in the winter. And not having spent any time in Canada, I don't know that for certain. But my conjecture is that it's not very sunny during the winter, even on a clear day.
Well, we get sunshine till about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon, and then it gets pitch black because of the time change and everything throughout Canada. And clearly the faded winter light. So she's writing this probably in the late afternoon when the light is fading and darkness is descending. And she's kind of telling her mother only what she needs to tell her to keep her placated, but nothing more.
And that leads us into the next bit. Just tell her, they tell her that you've got $10 and you'll be all right. And when you get straight, you're going to come back east someday. So she's out west. We've kind of established that already. The letters are just kind of pro forma events. Hey, this is what happened today, but I'm only going to tell you what happened external to me. I'm not going to tell you what's going on inside of me.
Correct.
And maybe she's even trying to convince herself that she is all right.
Yes.
Because otherwise, why would she do that? She's trying to convince her mother, of course.
When you get straight, you're going to come back east someday. I don't know if she's telling her mother that or subconsciously telling herself that, but she's obviously trying to see her way through some type of crisis. And when it's over, she'll come home. But she can't yet because in her mind, things are not straightened out, whether that's a drug issue or just straightening her mind out. And when she straightens her mind out and straightens her life out, she'll come back. But right now she can't. Maybe shame has a little bit to do with it.
Oh, I'm sure it has a lot to do with it. And yeah, there's a reference to a drug habit there because that was the lingo in 67, 68. Okay, getting straight as opposed to being hooked on something. So that's my own conjecture. Does your mother know you had a man in the West? Now, we don't know anything about this guy, but we can probably conclude that he is closer to the woman in the song than he is to the mother that she is writing to.
Yes.
Does your mother know you drove him from your door? Now, we don't know the circumstances of that. Maybe he was beating her up. Maybe they were just incompatible. I would like to think that he genuinely loved her or was trying to love her, and she either couldn't accept it or her addiction was so bad that she couldn't return the love.
Yes, and this is not something she wants her mother or her parents to know about. This is her own personal life, and she had this guy, either was mistreated by him or mistreated him or a little of both. And she drove him from her door. And again, it then goes on. Anyway, that's all you think about. You'd call her if you could. Again, she's going back to the standard letter that she's writing to her mother in order for her mother not to be terrified that, oh my God, it's my weekly letter. I haven't had a letter from my daughter. What am I going to do? She doesn't want to panic her parents. So she's kind of keeping them at bay by writing them these letters, but she's telling them only the standard stuff she wants them to hear, whereas she's got her own issues where she is.
I get a vision of, and I saw this many, many years ago, the most generic postcard you could ever think. Okay, so on the front, it had postcard, and on the back, it has like check boxes. I am good, bad, not. You check one of the boxes. Wish you were here, not here. Something like that. This is almost an artistic version of the same thing.
Yeah.
You're listening to Carefree Highway Revisited. We'll be right back after a word from a podcast partner or two.
Sandro, look!
Yes, Zach? Wait, what's that thing you're holding up?
It's a time travel device. We can use it to go back to the past and watch movies.
But we already do that on our podcast, Oldie But, Goodie.
No, on previous episodes we were pretending to time travel. Now we can do it for real.
Cool, so we can really go back to like the 80s or the 90s?
No, Santo, you're thinking too little. I mean, we could go really far back, like we travel back over 100 years into the past.
Oh, but Zach, that's so far in the past. Those movies would be old.
Yeah, but, well, the show is called Oldie But a Goodie, so we should probably do old movies.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's right, folks. This year on Oldie But a Goodie, we're going back further than ever before.
Wait, who are you talking to?
We're starting in 1920s, doing one movie from that year, and then moving up to 1921, and we're continuing that until the year 1969.
Nice.
Join our time-traveling journey through cinema by subscribing now to Oldie But a Goodie out wherever you get your podcasts.
That's Not Canon Productions podcast.
No one can tell the true stories of the West better than author Rick Steber. And now there's a podcast showcasing his work. It's called Writing the West, and every episode will feature his short stories and his poetry. If you want to know the true stories of cowboys, pioneers, miners, and Native Americans, this 15-minute podcast is for you. Writing the West is available on Spotify, Audible, Podbean, or wherever you get your listening matter. That's Writing the West, the work of Rick Steber. Does your mother know you walked all day in the rain? Now, that implies that she is unemployed, or that she's homeless, or that she is trying to sell herself, or some combination of why would she be walking.
Or maybe she's just lost, depressed, and needs to find herself, and she's walking in the rain somewhere. I'm not sure what it is. Walking alone in the rain, it's a sad portrait of this little girl. And again, it's something that her mother, does your mother know you walked all day in the rain? Of course her mother wouldn't know that, because if she wrote that in a letter, her mother would panic and would probably have been on the next plane or train to out west to fetch her daughter.
Assuming she could find her daughter.
Correct.
Does your mother know how deep your love could be? It's a beautiful line, but talking about walking in the rain and now how deep your love could be, where's that coming from?
Well, to me, we go back to, does your mother know you had a man in the West? Does your mother know you drove him from your door? And now, after breaking up with the guy over obvious problems, she really loves him and she misses him. Does your mother know how deep your love could be? And it was deep. And she was terribly hurt by what happened when she drove him from her door. That's how I read it.
I think you're probably right, but you can understand why I would think. We finished talking about the guy that you got rid of, so to speak. You're talking about walking all day in the rain, and now we're back to talking about how deep your love could be. So that part of it wasn't very cohesive. And I just thought that the line was placed in an interesting location. You've got $10 and your rent costs $8. Okay, so she's got a roof over her head for another month, but you said that you bought an album for $3, and so $2. How are you going to feed yourself? For a month?
She's living hand to mouth or far below hand to mouth. Clearly, even in 1968, $2 didn't buy a week or a month of food.
No, not at all. And I think she's still trying in her letters to convince herself that she's okay. Some people try to do that. And then we get to the turn of phrase. The letters that you write in the faded winter light just tell her, they tell her, and the lyrics stop there. That's the end of the poetry. And the reason I love this so much is, does your mother know? Your mother does know that something isn't right because you're not telling the whole story. Mm-hmm. And that is maybe because of the way the letters are being written, what they're not saying, because there's no emotion to them. Maybe it's maternal instinct, but what do the letters tell her? They tell her everything that she needs to know, and they tell her that this is a bad scene.
Yes, I mean, here it is. The perception of the daughter is that she's telling her mother just enough to not worry her mother and to continue her experiment of living alone. But the reality is, by what she's not telling her mother, she is telling her mother. She's telling her mother that she's lost and needs help and left home and really is ashamed to come back home at this point and calls out for tender, loving care. And it's a very interesting dynamic. But clearly at the end, they tell her. And what Lightfoot is saying, can't you see that the mother saw through all this? Any loving mother would see through all this, and she knows she's got a problem and she's got to tend to her daughter.
Well, the song did appear on Did She Mention My Name, which was recorded in 1967, came out in January of 68. You said it was a deep cut, and it definitely is. It was the last song on side one of the record, which means that it was the sixth song altogether.
We're dating ourselves using the word record.
Yeah, I know we are, but if the shoe fits, wear it. The song was not released as a single. The album went to number 21 in Canada, and if it charted anyplace else, I can't find a record of it.
The album, actually, looked it up. The album was nominated for Folk Album of the Year at the Grammys, and it lost out to Peter, Paul and Mary album 1700, which was a great album in itself. So it did get some recognition.
If you're up against Peter, Paul, and Mary, you're in some pretty tall cotton. And I had album 1700, and it was a fantastic album. So I'm sure he was honored to have been nominated. But even notwithstanding that, the album just didn't have a whole lot of chart action outside of Canada, at least not any that somebody took the time to make a record of.
You know, his 5 albums on United Artists, which are still my favorite, the 4. I mean, Sunday Concert is great, but there's not much original stuff on it. But the first 4 albums are, to me, some of his most solid albums. They're what I enjoy listening to most because it's the Lightfoot that I grew up with and saw. That's when I discovered how great this guy was. After seeing him in a coffee house in Montreal in 1968, I realized how good this guy was and went out and bought all his albums. But the reason that Albert Grossman, his manager, pulled him away from United Artists and signed him at the Reprise is because United Artists had a very, very weak U.S. distribution network.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't being promoted properly with the radio stations and missing out on what could have been more and more hits from those albums. If you think about a song like Song for a Winter's Night or Boss Man, his version of Early Morning Rain, I mean, these could have been hits if they were played by the U.S. record stations. They weren't because United Artists didn't promote and distribute well.
And of course, that changed when we had If You Could Read My Mind, but that's a story for another day. The personnel on this, we have Gordon, who had the vocals, of course. Hugh McCracken played the electric guitar. Red Shea had the lead acoustic guitar, although if he does have any fills on this, they're buried down in the mix. You can't hear them very easily. You mentioned John Simon doing the string arrangements, and I think he did a magnificent job. Better than Randy Newman did in later years on Gordon's songs, in my opinion. And then John Stockfish playing bass, and that is all the personnel that I know of that may have been related to this song.
As soon as I see the name Huey McCracken, I know that it was recorded in Nashville because he was one of the Nashville cats of the day, the studio musicians on Music Row in Nashville. So it, like the album before it and the album after it, they were all recorded in Nashville. And I think the strings were added later. I remember the album notes. Gordon said that it sounded so great, and then John Simon pulls out the string sessions, and it sounded so terrific. At the time, I was bowled over by the strings because, as I said before, this was, I believe, the first folk album to ever add string sections, and it sounded so great. If I look back at it today, I think it's a little overproduced. I tend to like him when he was just him, John Stockfish, and Red Shea, or Rick Haynes later. I think that was when he was at his best, although the strings were very entertaining.
It was very lush, and I don't know how many people associate lushness with Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
There's certainly nothing wrong with it. And I was listening to The Last Time I Saw Her last night on the way home from school, and I was just blown away because not only was the arrangement very lush, but you could tell that Gordon just sang the hell out of that song.
That song was recorded in one take.
The vocal was?
Yeah, the whole song was recorded in one take, as was Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
I knew about Wreck. I didn't know about Last Time.
And when you think about the magnificence of that song, it's pretty amazing that they got it down in one take.
And that brings us to the musical aspects of the song. I'll go first on this one, and I have to say that it is the strings for reasons that we've just finished talking about. Some people online have said they really liked the bass part, that John Stockfish was doing kind of a jazzy thing on the bass. I don't get that element when I'm listening to the song. I think what John did was appropriate, and I think it had its place, and I think it was perfect the way it was, but I didn't walk away from that thinking, wow, this could be a jazz song. I really didn't get that feeling. So you can comment on that or tell us what your favorite musical aspect of the song was.
I love the strings. The only problem with the strings is at certain points, they block out Red Shea's magnificence on lead guitar.
Yes.
And as Red Shea said, he said, I never played lead guitar. I just melded into Gordon's guitar and we sounded as one. He never considered himself to be a lead guitarist. But if you look back, Terry Clements had his greatness, and later Carter Lancaster is a fabulous guitarist. But Red Shea had a certain magic. You just have to listen to Canadian Railroad Trilogy or some of the amazing songs that he accompanies Gordon on.
There have been 4 official covers of the song. One was done by Foregone Conclusion in 1969, I guess about 6 months after the record came out. 2 months after that, there was one done by Irene Petrie. In February 1970, there was a group called the Sandalwood Candle covered the song. And then fast forward 40 years, and Tom Granata did the song. I have to tell you, I have not heard any of the covers. So have you, and do you think they do justice to the song?
Not only have I not heard them, this is the first time I heard that anyone covered those songs. So
okay.
I applaud you for your research.
Thanks. Is there anybody that you would want to hear attempt this song, or is it one that they broke the mold when Gordon recorded it, so no one else should ever try it?
I don't think that anyone can paint the portrait like he paints it. I can't imagine anyone playing it. It's kind of hard to think of someone playing this song and replicating what Gordon does so superbly. I listen to myself play it from time to time because whenever I'm thinking of Gordon Lightfoot with my guitar over my shoulder, this is usually one of the half dozen songs that comes to mind, and I play it. I love the song.
I might want to hear John McLaughlin do it because he's done albums of Gordon's songs, and I'd love to have him back on the show. He's been on a couple of times. As we're kind of winding down here, any other thoughts you wanted to share on Does Your Mother Know?
I invite everyone listening to this podcast to go to whatever their music source is and download this song, or find the LP if they have it, or the CD if they have it, and listen to this and tell me that it's not a magnificent musical portrait.
Gerry Kandestin, thank you so much for coming on. It's been too long a time since we sat down and talked about one of Gordon's songs, so I hope to have you on the show again real soon.
Always a pleasure, Mike.
And thanks for listening, everybody. If you like this well enough to listen to the whole thing, tell somebody about it. Carefree Highway Revisited is on Apple, Spotify, Acast, or wherever you get your listening matter. I'd like to make a special request for you to visit my Patreon page. I love this show so much, and I want to keep it going, and you're in a position to help. Please head over to www.patreon.com/Carefree Highway Revisited. $1 or $2 a month is all I ask. You can reach me, Mike Messner, at teachermike72@gmail.com. Well, our next episode will feature Jerry Haskew from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He and I will be discussing I'll Do Anything from the 1982 Shadows album. And that episode will be coming out during the third week in September 2025. Until then, for Gerry Kandestin, this is Mike Messner reminding you, run for the roses, but don't forget to stop and smell them. We'll see you next time.